Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Asifa Lahore. Let me introduce myself. I'm 38. I live in London, UK. I am British South Asian. I'm Muslim. I'm transgender. I'm also on the blind spectrum. I'm a very, very, very intersectional person. I perform as Britain's first out Muslim drag queen. And I'm also an award-winning activist. I'm going to start by literally just telling you a bit about myself and my journey, because I feel that my journey very much correlates to what we're talking about when it comes to South Asian LGBT mental health. So I was born in London, in the UK, in the year of 1983. And when I was 6 months old, my older brother, who was 3 years older than me, was diagnosed with autism. And my mum and dad did not quite understand how to deal with that. And so what happened was that I was sent to Pakistan to be brought up by my aunties and my nan. I remained in Pakistan for a year. And when I came back from Pakistan, when I came back to the UK from Pakistan, I was a year and a half. And I was born and brought up in South London to what I perceive to be a very normal, average, everyday British, Desi, South Asian household. I was surrounded by the South Asian culture, by Islam, obviously, and these were obviously the days before 9/11. My formative years were very much in the 90s, and I grew up in Britain where Islam was kind of seen as the religion of peace. The only other family that I had in the UK were my auntie on my dad's side. Everybody else was in Pakistan. So it was just these two families. I remember very early on feeling very different. I couldn't quite pinpoint it, obviously, when you're younger, but when I hit puberty and I realized that, I wasn't looking at the girls, but I was looking at the boys, I realized very early on, maybe age 10, 11, that I was attracted to boys. And inherently, with that realization came, I can't be gay, I can't do this, I can't be feeling this is wrong. It's wrong in terms of my culture, and it's also wrong in terms of my religion. So I kept it to myself for many years. My sister, who's 6 years younger than me, read my diary. I was 16, she was 10, and she said, look, I know about you, and it's fine with me, just don't tell mum and dad, because they just won't understand. And interestingly enough, I had kept it to myself for up until that point 6 years. And my sister, who was, the first person in my family that found out and I came out to, just confirmed what I had inherently felt. So I basically lived a compartmentalized life. When I was able to go out clubbing and kind of spread my wings and go to university, I very much lived a compartmentalized life where everyone outside of the house, knew that I was gay. They perceived me as queer. I was, expressing myself, having a jolly old time. And then when I'd come home, I would instantly sort of become, the good Asian boy, the good Asian kid, the good Asian son. And, besides my sister, no one knew any better. I went to university. I ended up, finding what I call the Gaysian community, the South Asian, LGBT community. during my teenage years when I would go out clubbing. In the UK, there's a plethora of South Asian LGBT club nights, and I, ended up finding support services and support networks. And at university also, I met my future partner, who was also from a South Asian Muslim background. I conjured up all the energy and courage I had to come out to my parents. I came out to them in Urdu. I said, Ammi, main gay hoon. And sort of, it's a summer that I'll never forget, summer 2007, sort of everything, all hell broke loose, if you like. And, I was asked so many questions. Some questions I didn't have the answer for, some I did. Some I did, and I also did not want to disclose to my parents because, disclosing around your personal life and your feelings, especially to your traditional conservative parents, is very difficult for a young person. But I was taken to like my local doctor, my local imam. I also agreed at that time because I couldn't find a way forward. I fell into very much a depression, and I agreed to a first marriage with my first cousin in Pakistan. She's a she, heterosexual Pakistani girl. And, the deeper I got into my depression, the more I fell behind in my university lectures and seminars. And it was my university lecturer who pulled me aside and, said, what's going on? Your work, you're handing, work that is very substandard, much below the level that, you're capable of. And I burst into tears. I told him what was going on. And that changed the course of my life because they put me in touch with specific services in the UK, in London, central London at the time. It was a charity called NAS and a charity called Imam. NAS was a sexual health service for Black and Asian minority ethnic communities, and it dealt a lot with the South Asian queer community, because in the UK, the South Asian gay and bisexual men in particular are very high risk when it comes to HIV and sexually transmitted infections. And Iman is a support group, a support network for queer Muslims. So I accessed those services, and up until that point I would go and go clubbing to LGBT Asian venues, but I would really keep myself to myself. I lived that compartmentalized life. And it's only really when I attended all these support sessions and one-to-one counseling that I really began unpacking everything about my life, including my queerness, including, the hierarchy within the family, the patriarchy within the family, and unpacking so many things that were linked to my queerness and my South Asianness. And NAS in particular really helped, because not only did I get one-to-one counselling there, 12 sessions, I also had a counsellor who was South Asian, who I didn't have to do a lot of explaining. And I'm an Urdu and Punjabi speaker, and they were a Tamil speaker. But even using our collective languages, it was just so much easier and so much more cathartic. And it was at the end of those, at the end of that, chunk of counselling, that I went back to mum and dad and put my foot down and said, no, I'm definitely gay. This is who I am. I'm not going to get married. If anything, I want to get married to my boyfriend. And I graduated university with flying colours after a year of deferral. And being so inspired by the service that I received, I ended up actually graduating and getting a job at NAS. And I actually became a support worker for South Asian LGBT community in London. And I did that role for 10 years, from 2008 to 2018. And during that time, within the first year, I entered into a civil partnership with my partner. And my mum ended up coming. My dad slowly came round to the idea. And my mum and dad were like, look, if you keep it to yourself, if you don't, promote it, then we're happy with that. And my mom was happy with that. And, for a few years, I was happy with that because, life had been so all over the place that I decided to, live life by my mum and dad's and imam's requirements. So for about 2, 3, maybe 4 years, I was absolutely fine with just going to work, supporting people, being in the background, and really enjoying my own life. And then in 2011, the recession hit, the world recession, and my position went from full-time to part-time. So I decided to, okay, I've got a bit of spare time. Let me start going back to my love of performing. And I entered a national drag competition by total accident. I ended up winning a big prize in that competition. I was christened Britain's first out Muslim drag queen because I was the first South Asian person to enter that contest, and the first Muslim person to enter that contest as well. And so I began a career, as well as, supporting the community. I was also performing up and down the country in clubs, bars, theatres, and making that coin and really enjoying myself. I began putting out, stuff on social media, music videos and, performances, live performances, and didn't really expect much, but the UK broadcasters and tabloids began getting in contact with me about doing documentaries, about doing, debate shows. And I was always hesitant. I was like, no. I'm not going to do this because I made a promise to my mom and dad. And the more and more I went on supporting people, and the more and more, stories I would hear, or cases I would deal with in my support work, where people were having mental breakdowns, nervous breakdowns, were going into depression, were rates of HIV were rocketing through the roof in London, especially in the South Asian queer community, and there was an influx of asylum seekers in the past 10 years. And also, people were living in lavender marriages, I would deal with queer men's wives and their mental health as well. And I realized that something needs to be done about it. So I began, doing documentaries, doing debate shows, and my career as a drag artist in the UK just spiraled out of control. I ended up leaving NAS in 2018 after 10 years, and now I'm doing drag full time. And as part of that, there is a lot of activism. So in 2018, I also came out once again as transgender, a real privilege actually to come out twice. And when I came out as transgender, mum and dad actually understood me more because they were used to the terminology, which, for example, from Pakistan, Khwaja Sara is a term for the transgender. It's an umbrella term for the transgender community in Pakistan. And, in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of media coverage of the Khwaja Sara community. So mum and dad knew and were much more supportive of me being, transgender than they ever were of me being gay. And since then, I've gone back to Pakistan as well. I even met up with my cousin who I was meant to marry, and she's fine. She's married someone else. She's got three children. And most of my family in Pakistan are supportive, and most of my family in the UK are supportive. Obviously, there are parts of the family, a minority, that, we don't get invited to certain people's weddings or certain dawats or dinners or celebrations, and that's fine. It's been a long journey with my parents and with the family, and it's a journey that's ever continuing. I don't think as queer people, we stop coming out. We're forever coming out. So that's me. That's me in an entire nutshell. You can see much more of me if you wish on social media. My coming out story has been covered so much. So you can Google my name and you can see for yourself. I wanted to talk about the nuances and the intersectionality of the South Asian LGBT community. Now, I'm going to talk specifically about, the lived experience I have here in the UK. So I will be talking about it from a British, Desi, British Asian, and British South Asian perspective. But feel free to take whatever you can, especially for those of you, watching this around the world. And feel free just to copy and paste the similarities to your work overseas. What may be right in the UK may not be right in Canada, for example. So it's just about tweaking what I'm talking about and just applying it, through the Canadian lens or the American or Indian or Pakistani or wherever you may be watching this. So the UK has the largest South Asian diaspora in the world. We make up, a large majority of the ethnic minority community in the UK. And obviously, with that comes the fact that we inherently have the largest South Asian LGBT community, the largest of any ethnic minority. And with that is so much diversity. We mustn't paint all South Asian LGBT people with one brush. You have those people that are out and proud, that, live their life. They may not be screaming it from the rooftops in terms of media, in terms of, I don't know, being a drag artist or giving news articles or being interviewed on the news or anything, but they're living their lives. They're out, they're proud. Some are married, some aren't, to, people they want to be married to. Some are out there, attending prides, attending clubs. Some are really involved in activism. I think the last 10 years has proven worldwide that gone are the days that South Asian, Desi, LGBT queer people do not exist. Very much a thing of the past. Very visible, very out there. Then you have another subsection of South Asian LGBTQ plus people that are not out. That's a large majority. Many of them will stay in the closet or not come out for the entirety of their life. Some may never get married or may have, I don't know, a compartmentalized life, very much like I used to have. And, as South Asian people watching this, we all know of one cousin or one auntie or one uncle that never got married. And we all know why, but we choose to stay silent or we choose to believe whatever is fed to us, There was in my nanny's generation, so my mum's generation, my nanny's brother never ever married. And looking back now, if I look at it objectively, he was so obviously a gay or bisexual man who spent most of his life, unfortunately, using substance abuse to, I guess, deal with whatever was going on for him. And now looking back, and you know, may he rest in peace and power, it's very obvious that he was a queer person. So there are those people that will always remain in the closet, always, you know, some of them may get married to heterosexual people in order to, you know, give the notion that they're heterosexual, or, you know, put under pressure by family or community, or even by themselves. You know, many people that are closeted or don't feel safe coming out, some suffer from internalized homophobia or transphobia, biphobia. So, you know, when you're growing up with all the notions that come with being South Asian, you know, South Asian culture in itself, you know, culturally and traditionally, and although things have changed definitely in the last 20 years, but there is notions of arranged marriages. There are notions of, yes, you can love, but, you know, there is preference when it comes to marriage and arranged marriage. And although that's changed a lot, especially in the diasporas, child brides, you know, misogyny, arranged marriages, forced marriages are still a thing in both diasporas and the motherlands. So that needs to be taken into account, that, you know, growing up with all these notions, internalized homophobia, which is totally against, you know, cultural Asianness, and in many cases religious boundaries. You grow up with internalized homophobia, which I obviously unpacked during my counseling sessions. So yes, you get those people that are out, those people that are in the closet. Then you get a different section of people. You get what I call the newly arrived asylum seekers. So in the last 10, 15 years, there has been an influx of asylum seekers from the motherlands that have come to the UK and gained asylum on the grounds of their sexuality, gender expression, etc., etc. And I'm talking thousands. The UK Home Office hasn't released, you know, a list of countries that where the largest numbers of asylum seekers come from in the Commonwealth, but I wouldn't be surprised if countries like Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Pakistan, Bangladesh, for example, are very high on that list. And these this section of South Asian queer people, they come from the motherlands, which are obviously very anti-gay, in many cases very anti-trans, and they come with all the burdens of being South Asian, being LGBT, and then the nuances in between that, of leading hidden lives out there, of you know, keeping hush hush, using the internet and fake profiles to meet other people, and then coming to the UK, where not only are they faced with racism, and, you know, in many cases, many of them are overstayers of their visas. So, you know, poverty, and it's not like many of them came from, you know, richer, privileged backgrounds in the first place. So they've got that to deal with. Then, as well as the racism, they've got the ridiculous asylum process in the UK to deal with, where they have to prove that they're queer, and that leads to all sorts of mental health issues and questions, especially, you know, when the Western version of being gay, of being queer or bisexual, doesn't really copy and paste into Pakistan or India or Bangladesh. Nepal or Sri Lanka. You know, over here, the Western formula is very much out and proud, be who you are, be an individual. You know, you're an individual, you're not part of the community, you're not part of a community as such. You're an individual bringing your own talents to the community. But then in the East, we're led to believe that actually we are part of a community. We are part of a family block, and families stick together, and we, you know, we have to support the family economically, spiritually, in name, in honor. So carrying all that and coming to the UK and coming out, navigating that, and then say if you're coming out to your folks in Pakistan, or on the British side, if you're a British Asian, if you're coming out to your folks or your family in the UK, you're instantly tested on your faith. You're instantly tested on your culture. Oh, you know, you're queer, you're this, you're gay. How does this impact on your thisiness? How does this impact on your religion? And then taking on the burdens of all those mental health issues that come with that, the depression, the anxiety. For an asylum seeker, you know, having lived 20 odd years, 18 odd years in a country where you've got to be underground, where you've got to be hush hush, you're coming to the UK and you're still living hush hush. You're still living, you know, under fake profiles. You're meeting people with that notion that, oh my gosh, I can't. Even though they may see stuff on the TV, they may see LGBT celebrations. Because it isn't inherent in them, it is so difficult for them to navigate. Coming to the UK, where they have access to so much more candy, as I call it, in a sweet shop than they do back home, they put themselves at risk when it comes to HIV and sexually transmitted infections. Because as South Asian people, forget homosexuality, forget being queer, we're not taught about sexual health, full stop. Boy is expected to marry girl and know everything already. If you're lucky in the West, you might get a decent sexual education at school. And, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, over the years it has got better. But when it comes to queer sex education, it's still far behind. So, you know, if you come from a place, a country where there's zero sexual health knowledge, and you are constantly putting yourself at risk in a hotspot area such as London, such as New York, Toronto, even Mumbai, even you know, Karachi, Lahore, or Bangalore, there's so, you know, the lack of sexual health information leads to anxiety around the diagnosis, HIV, you know.